All right, guys. This is really not fair. How could I follow people? Like, at least we have one thing in common, right? Welcome. I'm glad that you stick around. I am going to talk to you about some research work we've done to try to help marketing leaders get a little bit ahead of what we're calling the messy middle. That space between the way we used to do things in the past, the way we're going to do things in the future, where we're in that moment where we're transitioning and things are looking not as clear as they could be, right? And one of the things that is getting quite fuzzy is how do I actually embed GenAI into my marketing organization in ways that create value, right? More recently, 6 months ago, we're all talking about GenAI and its potential. This month, now there's more work coming out talking about the difficulty of actually embedding GenAI and the fact that there's a lot of exploration, but not necessarily a lot of adoption because we're finding it hard to scale. And also, we're finding it hard to identify where to play, not just how to win with it, but where to play because so much is possible. So I guess it begs the question, what type of innovation is GenAI? Right? Is GenAI in marketing the equivalent of a puzzle we need to solve, like social media was? It came to us, and we needed to figure out how to engage consumers in that new environment, what type of content would work, what type of media would work. Or is GenAI more like a set of bricks with which we could actually build anything? And there is no instruction book. We're creating it as we go, right? A puzzle has a finite solution. We just have to solve it, but we know what we're building. Set of bricks, anything is possible. And we argue GenAI for marketing is more like a set of bricks. And if that's the case, then we not only need maturity models. Like if we look at how do we embed GenAI, there are a vast array of maturity models proposals out there for how do we do that. And there are elements of GenAI, particularly the data and technology infrastructure, that requires a maturity model approach. But we also think in order to manage GenAI as a set of bricks and create value with it, we may need to go beyond a maturity model. And so listen, literally, as recent as we collected the data up until 3 weeks ago, we surveyed over 500 companies, 10 industries, B2C, B2B, young and established, mid and large. And we're looking for not only how they are adopting GenAI and applying it, but what value are they creating from it? In search for clues about what might help us have an adoption strategy that's more effective. And a couple of things to report. The first thing is that, as we would expect, we are still very early. About 15% of the firms in our study claim to be doing activities that are leading, where they were convinced or at least comfortable with recognizing themselves as leading in adopting GenAI. 15%. That means 85% of the rest were really at some point of exploration. And more than half were just acknowledging themselves as starting. So it's still early. Now, we actually collected specific actions that firms are doing to embed GenAI in marketing, and we took those actions and we gave it to GenAI and said, if these actions were taken by one company, how mature would that company be? And the algorithm took all the actions that said, well, that company would be emerging to moderately advanced. So another way of saying that is that we are doing a lot of things, but a lot of the things that we're doing are still early on, trying to get a sense of what to make of it, how to use it more effectively. Not every firm is going at it equally, of course, and actually there's a big difference by industry. So as we would expect, technology firms, but also financial services firms, we have the largest population of companies saying they're first movers, that they want to be first movers, that they are not asking questions and they're not waiting, they're like moving fast. On the other side, we have in the pharma or the telecom, the largest population of firms that are saying, no, I'm going to be a fast follower. You know, I'm going to let others kind of break the ice, and then I'm going to follow through the path that we think might be better for us once that path is clear. So there are different strategies for how to embed this and how to approach it, and we took those into consideration. And the last point I will show you about the fact that we're early is the number of activities where in marketing where GenAI is being adopted. And the histogram that you see here cuts through almost 100 different activities that we measured. And notice the large spike of that distribution is closer to 0 than closer to 100, right? So we have a lot of firms doing a lot of things, but most of them are doing a few things, right? And also, the variation by type of firm is not that big. That's why you see those dots, almost all in the same position, because regardless if the firm is large or small, or by industry, or by age, established or new, the range is between 20 and 30% of the activities are being covered. There's a lot of room still to be played. So we think that to help the exploration and adoption of AI, in addition to the maturity model, we actually need a map. A map that can help you and your leaders understand what's possible, so what could be done, but then help you choose what should be done. Because what should be done doesn't necessarily need to match what's possible, right? But we need to start with envisioning the full scope. Otherwise, we run the risk of using this set of bricks in ways that are not leveraging its full potential. So here's what I want to present to you. I want to present to you this data-driven map of how to explore, how to think about the opportunities of GenAI. And it has two dimensions. The first one, think of it as, what job do you want to give GenAI to do for you? So think of almost as GenAI as somebody you're going to hire, right? Because in most cases, they're not going to be replacing your talent. They're going to be augmenting your talent and your decisions. So if you think about GenAI as somebody you're hiring, what is that person that you're going to hire going to ask you? They're going to ask you, what's my job description? What do you want me to do, right? What do you hire me into? And how do you define that job description is really important. And we think you should define it by the area, by value, by business opportunity, or by business need, not by task necessarily. Now, in order to inform the areas of value that we use to create this framework, we went back to work that me and my colleagues did 3 years ago, which is published in the Harvard Business Review, where we mapped the areas of value that marketing creates today, and along those six areas of value, 72 different capabilities. Now, clearly, I'm not going to take you through this image. It's too complex. But that is the level of granularity we need to get to if we want to actually start imagining and crafting a map that's useful, right? So start with all those different potential areas of need that could be addressed by GenAI. So we measure the activity of GenAI across the different areas of value or kind of jobs you could give GenAI by industry. And I don't want you don't necessarily need to understand the details. I just want you to see the lines, the curves that emerge from this picture. Notice on the CPG side that there is a lot of gray, meaning space that has yet to be explored on the right side, and much deeper space that there's a lot of activity on the left side. So that line is inclined. That tells us that CPG firms, at least in our study, are very focused on a few things. Now move your eye to the right and look at the technology firms, and notice how there's less gray area there. And notice that those lines are not yet flat, but they're getting to flat. That means they're actually giving GenAI more jobs. They're using GenAI in more areas of activity, more business needs. So technology is moving full speed ahead across more areas. CPG is moving more cautiously across a few areas. Both equally deep, but not with the same breadth. Okay, important. That's the first dimension. What jobs are you going to give GenAI based on the value you want to create? And then what are the different areas of value that GenAI can do for you, right? One is the things you're going to ask it to do. Is it to improve engagement, to improve the customer experience? Is it to improve transactions? Is it to help you discover new markets? Those are the jobs. Now, the values that GenAI can create come down to three. And we heard different terms today, but similar ideas. One is about lowering or improving your resource use. It could be time, accelerating tasks, it could be effort, or it could be money. But all about is reducing cost, right? Second is about improving quality or helping you drive growth. And then lastly, very important, is about inventing new ways of doing things that actually were not conceived as possible before, right? That third one is really important because it's often overlooked. That third one requires a lot of creativity among your teams. The first one is an easier place to start, and it's the use case that most of us are using. So we measured the areas of value that companies are deriving out of the application of GenAI around these three categories. Lowering costs, increasing quality, or inventing disruptive ways of creating value for customers. And notice, again, the trajectory here. The dots are the means, the average value created by different industries in different sources. And notice that most of the dots are higher on decreased cost. On improved quality, the dots start going down, and then on driving innovation and invention become the lowest. That tells us that collectively, across 10 industries, collectively, where we are focusing our attention right now is on decreasing cost. And where we're not really active looking on is on disruptive innovation that could help us change the game. Now, if you're opportunistic, you may say, well, maybe actually I should dedicate a little bit of resources to that last part because nobody's paying attention to that right now. Everybody's focused on building a use case that's around efficiency, time, speed, and or some quality improvements as well. So that can be the opportunity. Now, when you put those two dimensions together, you see kind of the jobs you want to give GenAI and the value you can derive from GenAI, you end up with a map like this. Now, this heat map tells you where currently, across 10 industries, where currently we're playing. Where are we playing? So we start with the areas of value on top. The first one is engagement. Think of that as about building engagement with your brand investments to expand the meaning of your brand. That's a lot around content generation. Notice that those are the darker areas. Also notice that that's also the darker areas about decreasing cost. So what we can extrapolate from this heat map is most of the activities are around decreasing cost. So notice the blue areas are darker around that column, around that row. And then the column of engagement and the column of exchange are also the darkest. And there's quite a bit of activity on experience. So customer service applications, performance marketing, content generation application. We've heard a lot of that in the last 2 days. That's really collectively where we're centering our energies. I want you to think about not the blue areas. I want you to think about the gray areas now. Because when you add this up, actually 1% of the GenAI opportunity has been captured, meaning there are more than 50% of the firms that have already entered that. And that has to do with customer experience and customer service. There's about 60% that have been entered but not yet captured. And there's 40% that's still open, that there's not enough activity to say that nobody's actually leveraging it enough, right? So this map gives us an idea not only of where the activity is happening today, but where it's actually still open, where might be opportunities for us. Now, I'm going to move the level of aggregation from an industry level, from a total study level to an industry level. And I want to show you now contrast by industry. So you see CPG on the upper left. Notice the three squares, dark blue. Those relate to customer-facing activities, a lot of content and customer service activities, programmatic media management activities. Notice the gray cells where it relates to improving quality and invention, driving invention. CPG firms are really focused on decreasing costs in their application of GenAI. And I want you to contrast that with technology firms, right underneath it. Notice how many more areas technology firms are exploring. Still, they're not exploring everywhere, but they're going way into the improving quality, and they have some areas of disruptive innovation as well. So they're moving faster at leveraging the full map in a way, right? Now, how can this help you? You can use this to, be as part of your business case internally to imagine that you have this data at your firm level, and now you can benchmark it against your industry and then against other industries. It can help you make the case for why you need to either more breadth or why you need more depth in the way you're going at embedding GenAI. Now, this map is incomplete for two reasons. First, GenAI is not directly applicable to all those 72 areas that I described to you earlier. There's a GenAI exposure level that will vary over time. That today it sits at one level, but over time, as the technology improves, it's going to be able to help more and more areas. So we need to adjust that map by the GenAI exposure level. So that's what we did. Again, went back to that map of 72 capabilities and assessed the GenAI exposure for each of those 72 capabilities in three ways. Ability to lower cost, ability to improve quality, and then ability to drive disruptive invention. And what we find is that in 76% of the activities related to lowering cost, GenAI is ready in the majority of those activities. And it almost also makes sense why a lot of our efforts are focused on that. But 41% of the activities, it could improve quality in 41% of the activities, and it can drive disruptive innovation in 40% of the activities. And those two areas are still fairly new instead of territories where we're exploring. So there is a lot of opportunity in those other two outcomes, in addition to delivering efficiencies. Now, again, I want to give you the contrast between one industry, CPG, and technology. So in the case of CPG, you see the map of their adoption. What you see on the scatter plot is their adoption relative to the GenAI exposure. So on the left quadrant, left upper quadrant, you will see some dots there. Those dots mean they have low adoption, but high GenAI exposure. That is open space. Those are activities, areas of value that could be created that CPG companies have not yet explored. So you see all those dots are open space for value to be created. And I'm going to contrast that with the technology industry in our data. Now, focus on the scatter plot and look at the difference. Notice technology firms have emptied out that quadrant. There is nothing that has high GenAI exposure that has low incidence, low activity. They are leveraging everything that they should be leveraging. They are being more strategic, more aggressive, and more intentional in embedding GenAI in all the areas where it can create value, in the different types of value that it can create. The second reason why that map was incomplete is because not all those areas of value, not all those jobs that we could create are equally important to all your firms, right? Like, for some of you, driving transactions, conversions, managing your CPA down, performance marketing, that is the core to the role of marketing in your company. And if that's the case, then you need to prioritize that job for GenAI over the one about engagement and expanding brand value, or over areas about strategic innovation. So we need to weight the map based on what matters to your company. Which of those 6 areas of value matter most? So for some companies, it may be exchange value and experience value and maybe knowledge value. And for other companies, it may be engagement and strategic value. Now, so we did that. We looked at the data by different levels of incidence of GenAI across the 6 areas of value relative to how important managers reported them to be for their growth, okay? And notice those lines. I just want you to focus on the lines. The technology line slope is positive and is steep, right? That tells us that they are investing more on things that matter more to them. Does that make sense, right? And notice the CPG line is going down. That means actually, they're almost like an inverse correlation. There are some things that matter a lot to them that they're not investing on, they're not adopting GenAI on. And they're investing GenAI on things that arguably are probably less important to their growth today. Okay? So there's not a good match. So the question was, I wonder, is this fit between how important this area of value is and am I applying GenAI to it? I wonder if this fit matters. Right? Does it make a difference? So in order to assess that, we created a measure of how much value each company was extracting out of GenAI. And so here's the distribution across the over 500 firms that we have of how much value companies were deriving. And we had two groups. We had about 16% of the companies that were generating significant value out of GenAI compared to about 20% of the companies that were on the other side of that distribution that were reporting very low levels of value creation with GenAI. And then we compare the two, and we say, okay, are the fit levels between these two groups the same or different? Is fit explaining some of this difference after we control for other factors like firm type, industry type, etc.? And here's what we find. That fit that I discussed with you really matters. So focusing GenAI on jobs that are of high value and then going deep, not only on lowering costs, but quality and invention, really matters. Between low fit and high fit, the difference in the probability of being a high impact company with GenAI almost doubled. Now, we looked at this by first mover companies, fast follower companies, and wait and see companies because we're thinking, well, maybe this effect is only on first movers. But no, we see it in all three companies. Now, of course, it's lower in those that are kind of waiting and seeing. But look at the first mover impact. It goes from 20% to 65%. So the probability of them to be in that group that high impact, high leverage group almost more than triples if they are pursuing it with a notion of high fit. So when we put it together, what we are recommending is that you create a map that's based on jobs to be done by GenAI driven by your business needs and combined with these three goals that GenAI could do for you: reducing costs, improving quality, or helping you drive invention, inventing new ways. And prioritize the goals, so put it in order of priority to your industry, and then prioritize the benefits of GenAI exposure. That will give you, we believe, a roadmap that can help you get out a bit of the fuzzy middle we're in today and help inform your strategic bets moving forward. That's all I had, guys. Thank you. I know it was not people, but hopefully it was useful. Thanks for being here.